The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Get up to £500 refunded as real money for new Jeff Banks online accounts after your first month of betting. Use promo code FFP500 at jeffbanks.bet.
Welcome back to the Final Furlong podcast. I'm Emmet Kennedy. We're going to talk about some of the biggest stories from the weekend's racing, including only £1,500 between Willie Mullins and Dan Skelton. It's currently in the favour of Dan Skelton, but that Willie Mullins battalion is coming to defend his Trainers' Championship and proper return of the flat racing as well. We'll do so in the company of TPD and At The Races pundit Adam Mills, and a first-time guest on the show, recently retired, a winning ride to see things out as well. There was nothing controversial about that race whatsoever. Alan Johns, welcome to the Final Furlong.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
The system of a retiring jockey's last ever race, you should just back that horse, back that jockey blindly. It worked, I think, for everybody except poor old Pat Edery. It didn't quite work for him and Gamut, but it certainly worked for you. What was that feeling like going out with a winner?
It was unbelievable, to be honest, and I know a lot go out on a winner, but a lot of jockeys wait till they ride a winner and then announce it afterwards. I announced it in the morning because I had my local track to home and wanted a lot of my friends and family there, and I just thought it would get it out in the open and I can just relax and enjoy the day. So it was my last go at the job, and we had a horse that we believed was well handicapped, albeit slightly tapped in the head, so vulnerable for real life to get in the way. You know, when he did look on paper to have an outstanding chance, and he did make life a little bit difficult, but it was quite unbelievable, the feeling there really, and it was probably my best ever day in racing, to be honest. My most enjoyable day in racing to be my last one in the saddle.
How difficult a decision was it to decide to call it quits?
In one sense, my career as a jockey had plateaued, and I'm 35, and I couldn't really see me having an upturn in fortunes without really reinvesting a lot of time speculatively going out and riding out in new yards and trying to get going that way. And with my social media and media sort of work that I've built up over the last 18 months, I would have to be for giving up some of those opportunities to go and ride out in other yards. And to me, I felt like I was ready to stop at the I was going at, and I'm quite excited for a new career. And so the factors meant that it was quite an easy decision on paper. It was one of those things that it would have almost been easier to keep going, though. I almost had to stop. You actually have to tell people, make the decision, organise it, and it would almost have been easier to just finish the season, been quiet through the summer, and had another year. So it did take a bit of proactive work to make it happen. But overall, for me, really quite a easy decision, and one I'm very happy with.
And you have been doing an awful lot of work for the Jockey Club in terms of media. Were you part of the David Power Jockeys Cup as well? I saw you on ITV doing certainly some segments, and there was a bit of promo work going on as well.
I was just brought in by ITV on that particular day for a bit of for the intro of the show, but no, not involved with them. I do got contracts with Great British Racing, and I've been doing a lot of probably my own content, which is sponsored by DragonBet. So for them, and then more recently, I've done some work for ITV Racing as well, which has been quite good, and other bits and bobs here and there. But surprising, my riding in the last couple of years has meant that, whereas the top lads are riding 6 days a week, 7 days a week in the winter, I was probably riding 3 days a week, or 2 or 3 days a week. And then with that work I had in the background, it meant I was a busy boy, and actually had a lovely balance to it all. But I didn't want that sort of status quo to remain, and sort of just pedal along as I was. And that's why I stopped then.
Well, the ITV racing team listen to the show, and sometimes they watch it. So I'm going to make an appeal to the ITV production team. This is just between you and me, right? You know who you are. Less reality TV stars, more Alan Johns. Less Gemma Collins, more Alan Johns. Thank you very much. That'd be good for everybody in the racing world. Let's break down some of the big races and some of the key stories from the weekend's racing. We'll begin with the Coral Scottish Grand National, which goes to Captain Cody. A 1-2 for Willie Mullins. He becomes the first trainer. More records fall his way. The first trainer in history to win back-to-back runnings of the English Grand National, the Grand National, that is, for the purists out there, apologies, the Scottish Grand National in the same season back-to-back. It's phenomenal. And he has a 1-2, which means Skelton, he's coming. He's coming. Harry Cobden with a sensational ride out of Mills. What did you make of the win for Captain Cody?
Yeah, you couldn't. I could never have seen this coming, really. Even during the race, you're looking and thinking, like, what is this thing just suddenly emerging at the third last? Harry Cobden's motionless. Fair play to Willie. He's got the darts right, but they're all for different owners. I've no real problem with it. I thought Clark Kent ran a really good race to be up there all the way on the inside. It's just a stablemate who's clearly very quirky. I think Harry Cobden's comments were like Willie told him to ride him like a girl or something like that, because the horse only responds to really soft hands and patient rides. And, fair play to him. Willie's going to be champion trainer. I think it's over, to be honest. If I was a bookmaker, I'd be paying out. But, fair play to him. There's some achievement. And at least it's not like they're all for the same owner. They're all for different owners. And you ask the connections of Captain Cody or Clark Kent, did you have a good day on Saturday? Of course they did. They had runners in the Scottish National with a right chance. So whatever story there is around it, it's another brilliant training performance, and the right horse won clearly. Yeah,
he was a 14-1 shot for the National Hunt Chase, Alan. It's not like this was a horse that was blindingly obvious on paper, but you've got the current champion jockey, Harry Cobden, on board, the defending champion trainer, sending him over there as part of a battalion. Maybe we should have paid a little bit more attention to him.
Yeah, and it was interesting at Aintree. I thought how many of Willie's winners weren't favourite, but that's a function of how many horses Willie Mullins has in these races. It's there's a whole segment. I was watching the ITV coverage of the race, and Ollie Bell interviewed Willie before the race in the paddock, and he had to refer to his sheet of A4 with his runners highlighted to be able to keep track of it. I mean, it's reached ridiculous levels now, and I'm all for it. I think the two biggest things that people love in sport are an underdog story and greatness. And, with Willie Mullins, we are witnessing greatness. Regards to the horse, I think I thought he got an outstanding ride. I think Harry was given freedom by Willie to basically do what he wanted. I think Willie almost asked Harry what his plan was, and he sold him the story of dropping in. He was too keen in the National Hunt Chase, and I think Harry thought that's what had contributed to Danny Mullins becoming unshipped off him. So he was able to potter around at the back, get in a rhythm, get jumping, and it's clearly well handicapped. And it was a real sense of showmanship, I thought, with Harry's ride. I thought it was more than a touch cheeky, really. And but having said that, you could make an argument that it was sort of a bit risky to ride him quite so cold. But having won by half a length, I don't think the handicapper could possibly put him up by more than £7. Whereas if you win by 3 lengths, doing exactly what Harry did, he could put him up by £10 or more. So I do think it will be to the horse's benefit going forward.
Yeah, we'll see what the handicapper's actions are. He is Irish trained after all.
Yeah, I mean, it's I always think with handicapping, or certainly with horses I've ridden, I think, well, there's 2 ways of looking at this. It could go up £10, or they could be nice and only give us £5. So I'm basically saying in that moment that I don't have a clue what the handicapper's going to do, but one of my 2 options will be correct.
Yeah, none of us do, Alan. None of us do, but you summed it up pretty well. We've all kind of highlighted the great effort from Clark Kent. I felt very sorry for Andy Newton, who was really strong at Clark Kent, and heroic Superman effort there. Pardon the pun.
Just on that as well, I had a quick look at the sectionals of the race earlier, and it actually looked like they didn't go too hard, and probably Captain Cody gave away a lot of ground rather than he was travelling at the optimum speed for a lot of the way. So, and they quickened up all the way up the straight. And obviously, I think the winner, I think he hit a top speed at the line, really, which is very unusual. I think he hit 33 miles an hour at the line, which is very unusual for those stay-in chases, isn't it? So I think although it really suited the horse to drop in, relax and get in a rhythm, and it was the right ride for the horse, I think in pure numbers and efficiency of timings, he gave away ground that would probably indicate that, say, if he could settle in future and sit in the middle in the same race, he probably could be better again. So
is he a horse you're expecting improvement to come from?
Off the back of that, yes. I think, he's given away free ground essentially, which, I'm sort of I don't want to seem like I'm criticising the fact he was so far back, because that allowed the race to go as smoothly as it did. But I think it means that there's, potentially more to come because of the ground position given away.
Why can Willie Mullins not win a handicap chase at Cheltenham, Adam, but he can win handicap chases everywhere else?
Well, because he can't be asked is surely the correct answer to that, isn't it? I mean, if he wanted to, he's got this dearth of handicap chases. But the difference with Willie is he doesn't sit down in October and goes, I tell you what, we're going to just smuggle this thing into the Grand Annual. His view is we'll run them all. We'll run them in beginners chases, we'll run them in grade ones, and we'll see where we are. I think he could if he wanted to. I don't think there's any doubt that Willie might have said after winning the Grand National, okay, now we'll have a look at it. But he had 11 entries for the Scottish National. In the back of his mind, he was thinking, if we have a good entry, I can really have a run at this trainer's title again. So we'll get the horses ready. There's loads of options. If I was a trainer, I'd be hoping Willie doesn't look at the handicap chases at Cheltenham, because if he does, he could easily have 5 in each one. And then we really will see the sort of 12 to 15 winner mark be hit. This horse is quite fascinating. Alan mentioned the sectional. The point at which Captain Cody reached his top speed on Saturday was 2 seconds after he crossed the line. The run-out speed was 33.44 miles an hour, and that was the fastest he went across the entire 4 miles. He had more in the tank if he wanted to. This horse could probably have gone round again. That's how much this horse had in hand. It's, just a phenomenal training performance with a difficult horse. One day he will get to the point where he's got so many good horses that he has to look at those handicap chases. And then you'll have these mad things where bookmakers are pricing up Willie to have 25 winners at the festival. It's getting to that stage, but they're all so good. And each one of those horses had their chance. And if Olympic Man had jumped better, Patrick might have had the double. So you really can't find a fault. And it's just, we are living in the time of a genius, and we should all embrace it. Yeah,
I think the only way of looking at this is just admire what he's achieving. And I was very uncomfortable with the talking points being floated by the BHA about a year and a half ago about, we're going to introduce restrictions on the number of runners trainers can have in Class 1 or Class 2 handicaps. And then journalists promoting that, all of which then disappeared when the BHA went, we're not going to do that. We were never going to do that. We just wanted to see what the reaction would be. And all of those journalists who were promoting it dropped it. They've never mentioned it since. And some of them are now writing articles about how, Willie Mullins, genius. We all have to recognise the genius of it. But I do see some comments on social media from people saying, this is boring now. Like, this has just become boring. I don't understand how you can say that, Alan, when, as Adam has quite rightly pointed out, these horses are winning for different owners. And we've never seen anything like this, with the exception of Paul Nicholls winning every big Saturday race in Britain. 5 races at the Cheltenham Festival, 3 of them championship races, 2 big handicaps, and saddling the 1, 2, 3 in the Gold Cup. I don't remember people complaining about his dominance.
I think it's an inevitability. As soon as you get dominance, you get people lauding the dominance, and then on the other hand, you have those who very quickly say it's boring. I think it's just what some people will always think. For me, I love seeing Willie Mullins win. Maybe I would get bored of it in 6 to 12 years. I don't know quite when the time will come, but for the time being, I just think you just got to sit back and applaud him. And it's a sport, obviously, where, for all the races he's winning, it's a sport where a sporting event takes place 6, 7, 8 times on each given race meeting. So you've got lots of winners. He's not at the point yet where he's winning every race at Cheltenham. There's other people getting a go. I think I personally, knowing some of the participants and being familiar with a lot of the participants in British race, I would probably get more of a buzz at times if I was seeing somebody, a fellow Welsh jockey, winning a race that Willie Mullins is winning with an Irish jockey. But that's just sort of geographical specific to me than, a Willie Mullins thing, really.
Yeah, I get that. And look, there used to be the time where we were celebrating one Irish winner at Cheltenham because that's all we could hope for. And now it's massively changed. Do you get the sense that there is enough strength and depth coming through in Britain? Do you feel like Ollie Murphy and young trainers like that, Ben Pauling, are starting to make inroads? Or is this just going to continue to be like, it's a throwaway comment from you, but maybe you'll get tired of it in 6 to 12 years. If Willie Mullins continues to dominate it for 6 years, that's going to be a problem.
I don't know is the honest answer on the sort of balancing of the powers. I know it's every couple of months you'll see a Racing Post article of a trainer coming out and saying that they feel like the balance is redressing itself. I'm not sure. Obviously, it is a Willie Mullins versus Britain issue rather than a Ireland versus. If the VHA offered the HRI 50 million to sign up Willie Mullins, we'd be dominating the Presbyterian Cup every year, really. So maybe it's purely as specific to one individual. I think you've got young and upcoming trainers like Dan Skelton. He'll continue to push forward. Ollie Murphy, he's another young trainer who is really on the up, especially in the last couple of years. I think since teaming up with Sean Bowen, I think that's been a great assistance for the broad picture of the team. But the truth is, after winding on for a couple of minutes, I don't actually know on that one.
I can just see some sort of carve-out treaty negotiation going on, Adam, where Ireland finally gets full control of Cheltenham and Cheltenham Racecourse. It becomes Irish, Republic of Ireland, Cheltenham. Yeah. But the trade-off is Willie Mullins has to train under the British flags. I'm not so sure that's going to fly.
I just love the idea of the BHA just sort of driving some kind of truck full of cash to a lay-by outside Dublin and leaving the keys in the ignition and telling the HRI, we're just going to take Willie's registration for next week so we can win the Presbyterian Cup, shut everybody up. But it's not. The difficulty really is becoming, if you're the owners of the lifeblood of the sport, they're the ones funding it. If I was lucky enough and my missus would let me buy a horse from France and I thought this might be a Triumph Hurdle type, where would I send it? I'd send it to Willie Mullins because I want to win the big race, and that's just the nature of the beast. There are equally capable trainers in Britain, loads of them, but the difficulty has become the start of the process, the recruitment, everything funnels into Close Sutton because this recruitment is so good, and the way they get these horses ready and the plans they make. That's not a coincidence that Captain Cody wins a Scottish National like that. That's the result of 2 or 3 years of campaigning. And you need to have the owners also to have the patience to say, you know what, okay, I'll wait for my day. I'll accept that my horse might be the 18th best horse in the yard, but you'll get him ready for the time when it's right. It's very difficult. If I was to say the changes that we need to make, I don't think it's anything to do with the trainers. I think it's anything to do with the owners. I'm not sure it's the facilities. I think our programme book is wrong. I think we are far too Cheltenham-centric. Our races are so handicap-based that essentially if you don't think you can win a Grade 1, your first thought has got to be, what handicap mark can I get? And we could learn a lot from the Irish system around maiden hurdles, beginners' chases, try to get these horses an education without it becoming a case of we must get a mark. And that might make a bit of a difference. But right now, I don't really have a problem with it. I don't know. It's not like everything Willie trains is 1 to 10 on and we're getting really uncompetitive races. The flip side of it is if we took that Scottish National, we said, Willie, you can only have 2 runners. Suddenly we're going to have horses running in the Scottish National rated 119, 120. The flip side is I don't want to see that. I don't want to see a race where there's 25, 30 pounds between the top weight and the bottom weight, because the handicap system won't work in that function. Willie's got 6 horses in the race. They all fit in the handicap. It's made it for a decent spectacle. If you took his horses out, suddenly it's not so exciting. Clark Kent would not have got in, and yet he's run the race of his life to finish second.
I don't think it's actually practical in real life to put that in place, though, because, if say he had, 6 horses enter for the race and he can only run 2, and he had to have the hard conversation with 4 of his owners that their horse wasn't going to run, but it was the perfect race for their horse. What do they do? They bring it over to, they take it down the road to Gavin Cromwell or Paul Nicholls the week before the Scottish National, put it in their name and it can run, or a smaller trainer over here. It just doesn't seem like real life that's going to, when you actually delve into the practicalities of it, I just can't see that really happening.
I would imagine there would just be workarounds anyway. I would think that it would be very simply that you just go, well, actually, Patrick Mullins has a training license, and we already know Patrick is doing an awful lot of training as things stand. David Casey now has a training license. We already know David does an awful lot of training there. David Mullins. There's all kinds of different people you can go, oh, look.
Yeah.
These guys are the trainers. Are they?
Willie Mullins reserves. And I can see that.
To be fair, we'd do it, Emmet, for a fee, wouldn't we? I'd give my name for a training license for Willie, sure.
For a substantial fee, Adam Mills is available to be your backup trainer in name only right now. Willie, we can talk.
I do it for just expenses paid to air and a photo with the trophy, so I'll undercut you straight away.
Doing it for the gram and the social media expenses and the gravy train. I like it.
It's all about content.
I like it. All right. We can talk, Willie. If the BHA ever decide to dare and do something as stupid as that, then we can have a conversation about it. Spanish Harlem was tipped on this show by 3 of us. He was also tipped by Pricewise, so he would have been well backed. He gets taken out of the race through no fault of his own. Looked at the Stewards inquiry. I'm not really sure Richie McClernand could have done a whole lot. Now, he does look behind him and he does see Brian as he's doing it, but still, he's trying to do what he thinks is right by the horse. But no action taken against him, yet jockeys who literally use the tool they have at their disposal, the Pro Cush, to obtain the best possible finishing position, including Patrick Mullins in the Grand National, are being banned left, right and centre. So should there have been any action taken against Richie McClernand, or was it just one of the unfortunate things of racing, Adam Mills?
No, there should be no action whatsoever taken for doing this, because Richie McClernand has no choice. He feels that his horse isn't right. The post-race examination by the vet says that the right hind leg was lame. What is Richie McClernand supposed to do? Is he supposed to look and go, clearly my horse doesn't feel right underneath me, but because there's a Willie Mullins horse here, I've got to jump the next? Imagine he jumps the next and that horse goes down.
Yeah.
You can't. Racing has just got to accept that this happens, and anyone calling this out is just pocket talking and needs to think about the bigger picture.
Yeah, I agree. Especially a week after Micheál Nolan.
Yeah.
It seems like a really, really odd thing that you'd be having a pop at Richie McClernand for doing what he thought was in the best interest of the welfare of his horse, while at the same time, only a week earlier, whatever your understanding or perception of the BHA stewards' actions were, Micheál Nolan did get a 10-day ban for a perceived breach of welfare guidelines on a horse who subsequently passed away. So it's an impossible one for the BHA, but also I don't really understand how you can then be having a pop at Richie.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely not. I mean, we in jockeys for falling in front of another horse and bringing them down. I mean, it's just part of the job. I think, just to put it into practice, what it's like for a jockey in that situation, you've got 2 options. You can try and pull up in a straight line, or if you're not going to stop the horse by the time you get to the next jump, you can wheel out and go around the jump. I mean, it's just, is this a serious thing? Are people criticising Richie McClernand for this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, no, there's no, to me, it's no conversation to be had there, really. It's just unfortunate. From Spanish Harlem's point of view, it's just sort of an act of God. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Doesn't mean we have to agree with it, and I certainly don't agree with that. I'm not sure what Richie could have done, particularly given what was going on. You pretty much said, Adam, it's Jover. It is Jover. There's only 1,500 quid between Willie and Dan. All the momentum seems to be now with Willie Mullins. He's got lots of firepower between now and the end of the jump season. Is it Jover? Is Willie Mullins going to retain his crown?
Well, for me, the obvious and easy answer is yes. But Dan Skelton, I looked yesterday, and Dan Skelton's got 50 horses or 50 entries in the next week around Britain. Willie has 15, all of which are at Cheltenham. So they're having a good old go, and there's some valuable races at Cheltenham, and I think the first few races out here was, to me, I was starting to think, maybe things aren't going to go Willie Mullins' way here for once, and then obviously 1-2 in the 200 grand Scottish National, and I felt like a fool for doubting him again. But I think the obvious sort of trajectory from here is Willie goes to the top. But I'm not going to be sort of thinking of betting on this sort of thing. But it is conceivable that Dan could still get a run of things, and he'll be running everything he can to try and win it.
Adam Mills, have you decided how you're going to spend your 7-1 winnings?
No, I haven't. I'm still annoyed they've suspended the cash out on that market, Emmet, but there we are. It probably is over, but what it does at least do is it makes some of these end-of-season races a bit more interesting. There's a Grade 2 at Cheltenham on Wednesday that's normally a sort of a bit of an afterthought with good ground horses and those kind of on the way down. And suddenly you've got Dan Skelton's running Risk in the Ground, Classic Getaway and O'More Parker over for Willie. You kind of get that. I mean, the sense I get is that I think Dan Skelton's got enough ammunition to keep him in contention as far as Sandown. But the problem comes at Sandown. What does Dan Skelton have to run for those big, valuable races compared to Willie, who, if he sacrifices one or two runners from Punchestown, will presumably carpet bomb the Bet365 Gold Cup? And I don't know really what the answer is with the Trainers' Championship, because if you change it to number of winners, it just becomes a case of whoever's got the most horses, really, and it rules out some others. It's a delicate situation, but it will make this more interesting. I'd imagine, Plumpton's my sort of nearest jumps track. They must be absolutely ecstatic that Willie Mullins is probably going to have a runner there in a novice hurdle. But for these smaller tracks, actually, the chance to say, you know what, we've got Patrick Mullins here riding something for Willie in the novice hurdle. It's kind of a bit of a commercial boost for them. It keeps certain races interesting, but if you want to see the mark of the man, Willie Mullins was actually fined by the stewards on Saturday. 140 quid. I bet he's shaking his head at that fine. £140 for double declaring chart topper. They're thinking about this trainer's title so much that they thought, you know what, we're going to declare this horse twice. Let's declare him twice, pick the best race, run him in that one. He finished second, unfortunately, but it's still, they are all out. If Dan Skelton landed every race at Cheltenham on Wednesday and suddenly had a 100 grand lead, Willie could still bring over another battalion. It's not. Yeah. The difference between the two is that Dan Skelton has 2 or 3 horses that could lose money. Willie's got 50.
Yeah, that's where this is really crucial. There's plenty of very good horses at Dan Skelton's yard, but the amount of very, very high-class horses that Willie Mullins has just vastly dwarfs him. We're going to be covering the racing at Cheltenham and indeed the Craven meeting on TalkSport 2 on Wednesday, so make sure you check that out. And it'll be very, very interesting as another step towards the Trainers' Championship. And the next 2 weeks of jumps racing in the UK are going to be really interesting as well. And just before we go on to the flat racing, Lee Mottershead did a fascinating expose, 2 of them, in the Racing Post, Alan, which I'm very keen to get your thoughts on. We had Lee on TalkSport 2 on Thursday and Friday. Spoke to Dave Yates as well. I mean, it's really just quite jaw-dropping. Smell of ammonia hanging in the air, literally. Prison-like conditions, no hot water, then excessively hot water, almost unbearable. Mold, damp, peeling paint. Female jockeys forced into male areas to reach their valets. Only 15 tracks met the 2024 upgrade deadline. Others won't be compliant until 2030. Hayley Turner, Adele Mulrennan, Tabitha Worsley, all speaking out. PJA pushing for new licensing standards by 2026. Louis Stewart, former jockey, was really, really frustrated by this when I was on air with him on Friday, particularly because he said this is stuff that's been highlighted for years and years and years, totally ignored. Are jockeys starting to feel disenfranchised in British racing? And from your own experience of being in the weighing room, just how bad is it? It's one thing to read about it, but to experience it, how bad is it at those tracks?
Yeah, look, I think objectively speaking, the standards aren't as high as they should be in a lot of race courses. As jockeys, when you first start riding, you come into the weighing room, and from that day all the way through your career, all you care about is getting as many rides as you can and as many winners as you can. And if you're lucky enough, you want to ride more quality then as well with it. So for me, speaking for me, and I think a lot of others, we come in, we see the standards of the changing rooms. They're probably similar at times to sort of dated high school sort of changing rooms for PE and whatever. And you just accept that as the norm. And it was actually, I found it a bit ironic that I think that the photo of Lorcan Williams cycling with all his sweat gear on next to the urinals in one of the changing rooms came out a day or two after I retired, obviously having spent the last 11 years in weighing rooms myself. And I found the photo quite shocking that, it almost brought to life to me in that moment. I was like, crikey, that is, I never stopped and thought about it that much almost. And we do complain and whinge to each other of the hot water not working enough or all these little things. But, that I actually thought a day after I retired that, things they just have to change. And I think the time span on which they're giving themselves, the race courses, to make these changes probably need to be expedited. And I do sort of sympathise a little bit for any business that's needing to spend money on anything that isn't going to increase their revenue and increase their profits. And it's a hard pill to swallow, that how much some of these building companies are going to be charging the race courses. But, if they'd have probably kept up with the times 10, 15, 20 years ago, they probably wouldn't need these massive investments now. And it just needs to happen, really.
Very much so. It's also just hypocrisy, Adam. Jockeys are expected to ride to the highest standards. If they breach any kind of rule from the BHA, they are punished severely and harshly. They're impeded from doing their work, even if it's a rule that's got nothing to do with welfare. Again, Pro Cush is not a welfare issue. There's no peer-reviewed study anywhere on the planet that says when the Pro Cush is used correctly, it causes pain to racehorses. It's made of fiberglass and foam padding, for goodness sakes. The BHA themselves admitted, this is just about improving the optics of racing. We're trying to attract a new fan base. How's that worked? As Matt Chapman said to Brenton Shee on ITV, have you got the statistics to show us an increase in turnover for betting, increased in attendances, increased for viewing figures? No, it's not worked at all. So they're punished for breaking rules, and yet they're expected to just put up with this nonsense. And they were very quick to get rid of the saunas in the race courses. That was no problem. But those same race courses are not able to actually get the facilities that are required. And when you think of, it's very nice to go to a race course and have VIP treatment, and maybe you manage to sneak into a corporate box every now and then, and that's a very nice experience as well. And that needs to be done because that obviously generates valuable revenue for racecourses. But it's a bit galling that the people who are sponsoring races are treated as well as they are, but the gladiators who are expected to go out into battle, literally risking life and limb, that's the sort of treatment they're getting in their very own weighing rooms, Adam.
Yeah, to be honest, I thought that picture when I first saw it was a joke. I thought surely there's not an exercise bike next to the urinals, but there really is. That's in any other sport. Imagine that in the Olympics. If an Olympic athlete turned up to the village in 4 years' time and went, "This is our warm-up area, and by the way, it's a toilet," and poor old Lorcan sitting there with his sweatsuit on, trying to lose a pound, and he has to have 2 or 3 jockeys coming in using it. It's just ridiculous. But it is. Rafe Beckett summed up yesterday on the Nick Luck on Sunday show when he said, Nick Lux, I think, said to him, the BHA could start imposing fines, they could start imposing things on there, and instead of that, Rafe said, yeah, but they won't do that. the BHA needs to act. You need to call out, this is ridiculous. Surely in the modern era, I don't know what quotes they're getting from these builders, but there must be other builders around. Surely you go, you know what, this isn't good. No, we can't wait 6 years to have adequate changing facilities with hot water where female jockeys can change in their own facility. This isn't 1850. This is 2025. We've got to get this right. And it's just bizarre. And I think the only way that's really solved is for the BHA. It needs to name and shame. Let's get these race courses out on a list. Here's a photo. These are the race courses. These are the facilities. This is not good enough. Fix it. Because everything is done around the media rights. Everything's done around the betting. How many times you look on Twitter and you see owners complaining about the facilities in the owner's bar were terrible. The food in the owner's bar is terrible. Whatever it is you're complaining, the car parking at Cheltenham, we can fix that in 1 year, but we can't fix the facility for the people that make the sport happen and that put themselves at risk to make it happen. It's utterly bizarre.
I would also say that very proudly that horse racing is one of the really, it's the only sport where men and women compete equally. Female trainers against male trainers. Female jockeys, very importantly, against male jockeys. And there is a push to a certain extent in British racing to really highlight this, to really emphasize, oh, look, we've got this. For whatever reason, the mainstream coverage of it on television doesn't want to really, I don't know, there's such an opportunity to really go on daytime TV and say, hey, by the way, all these animal rights activists are saying these horrible things about racing. Guess what? We're the only sport where men and women compete equally. There is no weight allowance. They're there on merit. And it's not nepotism. They're there because they're very good. And British racing tries to push this narrative and then expects women to be changing in those conditions. Come and be part of our sport. Oh, by the way, there you go. That's how you can prep for your day's racing. You joking? It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And really absurd that jockeys are punished to the extent they are and nothing is done for them. I don't know how much longer this is sustainable, but anyway, we shall see. Talk about some flat racing. Alan, I know you can't wait to talk about flat racing. Do you need to go pick up your daughter now? Do you want to jump now?
No, I'm all right for a minute.
Okay, so
got a bit. Just if you ask me a difficult question, I might dash off.
There you go. That's what the excuse keeps. Oh no, I've got to. So Jonquil has switched from the now retired Sir Michael Stoute, but the word was out that this horse was very, very good. He overcame a lot wrong on debut to win. Then was really disappointing, like a number of Sir Michael Stoute horses on their second start or at least final start of the season. They just weren't firing. This horse goes to Andrew Balding. There was a lot of talk about him beforehand, Adam. Bit of talk from Oisin Murphy the night before as well, friend of the show. And now we know why. He's a winner of the Greenham. The last horse to run in these colours for this trainer, unseated his rider at the start, but technically won the race in Caldine and then went on to win the 2,000 guineas. Is Jonquil a serious classic contender in your eyes?
He is a serious classic contender, without doubt. This is an impressive performance. There's a couple of notes to kind of think about this race, though. Stalls 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 filled the first 5 places. You watch the early part of the race, the field split into 2 sort of Indian file groups of 5, and the 5 on the stand side finished first 5. But taking that aside, Jonquil has buried Rashabar, who was probably the leading 2-year-old in the UK last year, certainly in the way, his Group 1 form towards the end. He buried him. Really good sectional times at the finish, a really good run-out speed of 36.08 miles an hour. The only thing before you go thinking you should pile into this horse for the Guineas is that Juddmonte have got an absolute array of 3-year-olds. And both Harry Cobden, who trains Cosmic Year, who won at Kempton last Wednesday, and Andrew Balding in both their post-race interviews said, we'll talk to the team at Juddmonte, we'll decide where we want to go. They've also got Field of Gold in the Craven this week.
Yeah,
they've got loads of options, but this horse was really impressive. And if you assume that Rashabar ran to his rating, which I think he probably did, then Jonquil's absolutely buried him, which would suggest that he's getting close to a high sort of 115 or more on only his third start. There's so much to like about this that it's really hard to find any reason to knock the horse.
Slightly taken aback by the fact that I've just seen 5-1 about Field of Gold for the Craven, which doesn't make any sense to me. That will need to be looked at a little bit further in a second. Alan, just before we delve in deeper, what was your thoughts on Jonquil?
Yeah, I actually thought, I know he had a couple of, particularly in his second start last year, where he looked a bit sort of like his demeanour or behaviour was a little bit suspect. I thought he looked very straightforward, just tracked the pace, and he looked very balanced and smooth in what he did the other day. And, you know, obviously a new market for these horses that haven't got a lot of experience. There is the question of going into the dip, and but he looks equipped to handle that to me anyway.
Yeah, it seems like the right horses have come to the fore as well. Diablo Rojo, you would imagine, is a horse who's going to improve as the season goes on. He's race fit. Joseph O'Brien's horse, there was a fair bit of word going around for that horse that he could be quite smart. He's finished third. The crucial one, though, is Rashabar, because he's the Coventry winner. He's placed twice in Group 1 company last season against good horses. I know Brian Meehan was saying beforehand, Adam, that this is very much a race that will bring him on, but still, that's a big run from him. And if he has run to something like his level, there's no reason to think that Jonquil wasn't going into this race with the view of, yeah, this will bring him on. Like, I can't imagine that any of the horses in this race were drilled to the eyeballs and ready for the day. So these front three are probably exciting, but specifically Jonquil.
Yeah, I think Jonquil is the only thing I'd say about Rashabar. I did the preview for this race for At the Races, and if you watch his run in the Jean-Luc Lagardère, and you just start to wonder, like, does he have? He's a very good horse, but he won the Coventry by staying really well over the 6 furlongs. I just wonder if genuine speed catches him out, because this is the second time that I thought really he had everything run to suit. 7 winners on the card at Newbury on Saturday, all of them raced prominently. And I just think Jonquil did him for speed. Rashabar is going to be a difficult horse to campaign if the ground stays as it is. I think he can maybe do it a little bit of cut just to slow down the opposition slightly. But I think he's run a brilliant race. Therefore, Jonquil's run a fantastic race. Saracen in third. Sumion is, relatively gentle with him on just his second start. Interesting with him is when he's shaken up, he shifts a little bit to his right. They correct that. Then he shifts a bit to his left. He's still learning on the job. He will come on. There are definitely better 3-year-old prospects in Ireland, but I think he's probably easily a 100-plus horse. So this looks a fairly solid piece of form to me. And if Jonquil lined up at Newmarket, I'd be no more than a 6 or 7 to 1 chance.
Let's talk about
Do you think they'll pick one Juddmonte horse or one strong fancy and something at a bigger price and avoid, or would they let them all have their chances? How would they play that?
With Cosmic Year, Harry Charlton's interview at Racing TV said, "I don't want to run on quick ground going in and out of those dips." That to me felt like that might have been code for, if the ground is good at Newmarket, we'll let something else take its chance. Yeah. But they've got these horses there. They've got the options of going to Ireland. They've also got the French Guineas, which is 10 days after Newmarket. So you might, even though, as we'll come to in a minute, the ground in Paris is ridiculously quick for this time of year, but there are options to split them up. I'm not really, I'm certainly not getting phone calls from the people at Juddmonte asking what I think. But for me, I think they probably want to have a look at how Field of Gold goes in the Craven, see what Aiden's got, and then you kind of make a plan. It's not impossible to think they could win all 3 Guineas, because if they do appear to have 3 absolute top-class 3-year-old colts.
My understanding is that Aiden's horses are a little bit behind. So just bear that in mind. Placing bets on horses going forward, they're just maybe 3 weeks behind. This tends to be the thing, by the way. They don't really catch fire until the Guineas, and it's really only his Guineas team that actually catch fire. Royal Ascot is where you're going to really see Aidan O'Brien's horses. Irish Guineas meeting, that's when they'll really kick into full gear. So I'd ignore the defeat of Bubbling, for example, first time out. Why would I mention her? Because she was a fairly comprehensive winner over Duty First, who's also got form with Desert Flower and seems to have wintered very, very well. This was a hugely impressive performance from her in the Dubai Duty Free Stakes. What did you make of her, Adam?
What? This race I'm going to treat with a real pinch of salt, because sometimes you get funny results in the Fred Darling. I mean, she's absolutely battered them. Her winning time is quicker than Jonquil. Maybe we should be believing it, but the first 2 horses were rated 96 and 81. Is the handicapper really that far off? I'm not sure. I think Archie Watson said the original plan was to look at the Italian Guineas, which is kind of a Group 2 softer option, and now it's kind of like, maybe we've got something. But she's won She's done it really well. Really liked her attitude in the closing stages. I don't know why, but I have more doubts about this form than I do the others. And the Stewards report is putting me off a little bit because the connections of sort of the two more fancy horses, Mountain Breeze and Simmering, which is Godolphin and Ollie Sangster, both said the same thing. They weren't suited by the ground, which was good to firm, and in their opinion was riding loose. And that maybe has affected a few of the fillies in behind, particularly the inexperienced ones. So you've got to sort of row back a little bit on this form. But, you know, that being said, it's not like she's scrambled home by a nose. She's absolutely battered this field.
No, she's done everything right. She's won really, really well. But, again, those Aidan O'Brien fillies from last season, I just can't believe that they're now not really firing. It has to be the fact that his yard just isn't fully in gear yet. So Heaven's Gate ends up finishing stone last. Mountain Breeze, Godolphin's horses seem to be a bit behind as well. At least the British ones are. Simmering, well held, formal even for Oisin and Andrew, was pretty well fancied in the market. Hasn't really run much of a race. It's impressive visually. It does leave you going, I'm not so sure, Alan.
Yeah, I think it's probably a pinch of salt or a word of caution is probably correct. But if you just look with your eyes, which is what you normally look with, to be fair, just to clarify. But if you just use
Breaking
your
news.
eyes...
From now on, look with your eyes.
Yeah, I just thought I'd do that in case one of you corrected me. It was really visually impressive. And, you know, a couple of the fancied horses didn't quite perform. I actually thought it was quite an interesting sort of early to mid-race move from Holly Doyle. It looked like she was on the near side of the two groups, tracking one, which is a 50-1 shot, and she looked across and saw William Buick on the favourite making the running on the other side, tracked across to get a toe off him. As it happens, that was underperformed, but I just thought it was, it looked to me that's what was happening. I just thought that was a nice little bit of, you could always see the cogs going in a head, in Holly's brain perhaps.
Yeah, that's a good shout as well. I think, Adam, you were far more interested to talk about Paris Longchamp and the return of Zaragana, who had been unbeaten up until Arc weekend. She was sent off a red-hot favourite for the Big Fillies race, the Prix Marcel Bouzek, and she comes unstuck against a stable companion who looks like a nice prospect as well. Not everything went smoothly. She was sent off an odds-on favourite. She wins. She only ends up winning by a neck. If you read it on paper, you'd go, Even if you just watch the closing stages, you might go, Why should I think differently about Zaragana?
Well, I just think she's just different gravy. I mean, the first thing to note is on the way down to the start, she spread a plate, had to be reshot at the start. That didn't really help. They went pretty slow to the top of the hill. She was keen. I said to you off air, if there was sort of substantial in-running betting and I knew my stream was live, I'd have been hitting the lay button coming down the hill because Mickey Barcelona's trying to get her to settle. She's pulling. Thank God there wasn't, because the minute he asked her for an effort, it was bang, here we go. 10.57 seconds for the penultimate furlong is just electric. You know, she's perfect. A really nice horse for Charlie Fellows. I know they're going back for the French Guineas. I don't really see how they reverse form with Zaragana. I think a lot went wrong for her and she still did it. And I don't think she was fully wound up. The horses in behind are kind of a bit of a muchness. And you have to, 6 of the 7 runners finished the final 3 furlongs in less than 34 seconds. So this was a typical French race at Paris Longchamp, really, where it becomes a sprint from the 3 furlong pole. But Zaragana's overcome everything. But it's really also a note to her trainer. Francis-Henri Graffard is in unbelievable form. 9 winners from his last 20 runners, and 18 of the last 20 have finished in the first 3. So he's absolutely flying along, and he's having a credible run of success, which probably coincides with the fact that Mikel Barcelona has got the Aga Khan job and is riding out of his skin. I mean, he's ridden a winner today called Midak, who, again, luckily for me, I'm obviously a terrible judge of in-running, but I'd have been laying this thing for all it's worth at the 2 furlong pole, and it just kept finding for Mickey. He is riding so well. And Francis-Henri Graffard has an exceptional team of 3-year-old fillies this season. The French colts aren't up to much, in my opinion, but the French fillies are really strong. I think the plan is just to go back for the Pool Decided Polices, which is the simple race for Zaragana. But it might mean that the horse who beats a Vertical Blue in the market, in time, and I'll probably this will probably be one of those things that you remind me of in a year's time, Emmet, and go, you clown. But I think Zaragana could win everything at a mile this season. I think she is that good. So Vertical Blue getting the better of her in the Marcel Boussac might be an exceptional piece.
A mile for fillies or a mile for fillies and colts?
Oh, maybe both. I wouldn't rule it out. I think she's got loads of boot. Vertical Blue's got the better of her. She's 25-1 for the English Guineas. No idea if she's going to run. No idea if she'll handle Newmarket. But I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss the two of them. And I couldn't believe Zaragana won because everything went wrong. I thought, she's going to get done here. She's going to get done because she's pulled her way down the hill and she still did it. So,
well, Arc Day, I was watching TVG's coverage because I was in New York. Yeah, I was in New York. So I was watching TVG's coverage of the Arc. And they did a whole feature with the trainer. And yeah, obviously Zaragana was the horse that he was really talking up. But he was also talking up Vertical Blue. And she was a monster price that day. Like, he was expecting a big run from her. She'd be very interesting for Newmarket if she was to go. Siuni is the sire of St. Mark's Basilica. Paddington, Shin Emperor, who might have disappointed on Dubai World Cup night, but is a proper group horse in his own right. Sotsas is obviously an Arc winner. She's out of a Frankel mare. It would be great to see an Aga Khan horse dominate this season after his passing. But she's very, very exciting, Alan.
Yeah, well, Adam sold it to me anyway, so you've got to the bottom of me on this one now. So ready to go on and talk about Jan Brueghel when you're ready.
The enthusiasm for the flat from Alan is just electric. Out of interest, do you think this is a horse who will stick to a mile, or could she go for the French Oaks for the Prix Diane?
Well, they could do, but they've got Mandanaba as well, who's also in the Diane. I think they'll probably be quite keen to sort of split them up. The only caveat you've got to add is everyone just assumes French racing must be soft ground. But they're having the same weather we're having. The penetrometer reading was 3.4 at Paris Longchamp yesterday, which is good to firm, which in April is just unheard of. So this kind of assumption that the British trainers will go to Paris because they've got a soft ground filly, unless we get some rain, they're going to encounter the exact same conditions. So the race conditions did help Zaragana because she's by Siuni. She's got loads of speed. She really flies on that ground. But you know, the dam's by Frankel, so you'd have to think 10 furlongs would probably be in range. If they win the French Guineas, unless there's certain Mandanaba won't be beaten, why wouldn't you try and do the double?
Yeah. And then, of course, you can always just drop back to a mile afterwards, and hopefully that will be against the Colts. Zaragana. Zaringa was what the commentator was saying. I have no idea why. It really melted my brain that he was doing that. But Zaragana is a very, very exciting horse. And if you weren't excited before, you certainly are now after Adam Mills. Alan can't wait to talk about Jan Brueghel. And I'm sure that head carriage. So he gets beaten by Galen, who was race fit from Maidan. Joseph's horses continued to be in great form. And Dylan Brown McGonigal was brilliant on the front end. But the head carriage from Jan Brueghel, that's a talking point, Alan.
Yeah, I actually found it's almost rare to see a horse look so awkward, to be honest. I think obviously he got the winner got a great ride in front and, got a bit of a freebie and sort of quickened up and got them at it. I thought Ryan was trying his best to get going and motivate quick enough. And, he just looked so awkward. I actually went back and watched his win in the Ledger last year, and he was keen early, and he wasn't awkward the amount he was at the weekend, but you could see the signs were there. He had when he was keen early on, his head was quite high in the air, and he was just sort of looking to lean that way. And but yeah, it was, to me, it's normally indicative of a horse that's feeling something somewhere. Whether it's sore joints, sore mechanically. And in young horses and horses that haven't built up sort of wear and tear over the years, it could be something that a joint injection or something like that, a bit of cortisol. Look, I don't know, obviously, but maybe it's a bit sore on the day. Get him home, get him looked at by the vets, and they'd sort of assess each limb on the horse and find a sore point, and it might be something that could be fixed and could overcome it next time, perhaps. I don't know what you took from it, Adam.
Yeah, it's an interesting talking point, Adam, because we should remember this is a horse who was ruled out of running in the Melbourne Cup, not because of a Coolmore decision, but because the vets didn't want him running in the race. There was something about it they didn't like. Now, that was strongly objected to by Coolmore. But the fact that Alan then sees the head carriage and immediately goes, "Oh, I think you're feeling something, son." What's your overall interpretation of it?
I don't pay any attention to that Melbourne Cup report necessarily. I think there is a little bit of history with that in terms of they're so paranoid about the European horses that any kind of sign would be there. And I don't believe for one moment Coolmore would run a horse if they had any doubts whatsoever.
Absolutely.
The thing I took from this was kind of, firstly, he does hit the ground quite hard. And I just wonder if this was pretty lively for his seasonal return. But yeah, I mean, the head carriage was just worrying. It almost looked like he didn't want to go right-handed. I had to look at his form, and I wonder if he's not gone around a right-handed bend before, but he has. He just didn't look comfortable at any stage. I think the winner's a smart enough horse. We've got a great 109% finishing speed. He sort of stacks them up, kicks away, and that's it. I guess the crumb of comfort you take is also like Tower of London ran no race whatsoever either. So it's not like he's been done by a stablemate. The two of them have both, in their own way, run well below form. They had Los Angeles in this race. They took him out. Probably in hindsight, they wish they'd taken Jan Brueghel out as well. I just wonder if maybe if he was, I might be right, if he's feeling something and the ground's, slightly quicker than he might have wanted, it's just gone against him. You can't write off a horse because he's still finished second. He's only 2.5 lengths behind, but it's more now he's on a recovery mission, and now you've got to see him do it again. And I'd imagine he won't be going to Ascot on the back of this. They'll probably want to try and get another run into him if there's nothing comes to light.
Oh, well,
I think ground is a fair shout as well for something like this. And if he's got if it's a combination of feeling something or the ground being a bit quick for the horse, and that's how his response to it, not every horse is going to put their head to one side when the ground's too quick. Some are just going to battle through it and some are just not, but they're going to look straight forward from the outside looking in. That's just his reaction when something's a bit off, probably. So I think that's definitely an option as well.
I would really remind everybody that Auguste Rodin completely blew out in the 2000 Guineas, wins the Derby. City of Troy, the same thing. Luxembourg was awful on his comeback, wins the Tattersalls Gold Cup. Don't worry about this. This is the same as Willie Mullins early in the season in jumps. Pay no attention to what you're seeing right now. Doesn't matter. They're just getting them out. They just need to get a race into them. Doesn't really matter what they're showing. These horses will radically transform their form later in the season. And by the time it's coming to Royal Ascot, you'll see a very, very different Jan Brueghel. By the time it's Irish Guineas meeting, I think you'll see a very different version of him as well. Whatever races they decide to go for. What they've learned is 10 furlongs is not necessarily going to suit him. A mile 4 might be fine. Is he going to be a stare? Don't know. Maybe. But he will not be taking on Kyprios in the Gold Cup. That is the line from Aidan O'Brien as things stand. As long as Kyprios is okay, he will go for his third Gold Cup. None of the others that represent that stable will run against him. So just keep that in mind. Unless something was to happen to Kyprios, he's the number one for the Gold Cup. The others will find other targets between now and then. And if you are going to place a bet on Royal Ascot, by the way, Jeff Banks bet, FFP 500. Sign up now. Use your promo code FFP 500. You're eligible for 10% of any net losses back after your first 3 months of betting. Not just one, not just two. First 3 months of betting, up to £500. FFP 500 at jeffbanks.bet. Anything else to highlight from the weekend, Adam, before we wrap it up?
Only that you should go back to last Wednesday evening at Kempton and watch Cosmic Year if you haven't already.
Stunning.
They took him out of the Greenham to run him in a novice race under a penalty. Because it's on the all-weather, there'll be a sort of a wrong assumption these days of kind of like, they went to the all-weather, there must be doubts over him. I think they just didn't want to run on the quick ground because although he's beaten two newcomers, he's beaten them silly. And Oisin Murphy's really educated him in the last furlong and he's absolutely flown. He is worth noting. Just going back to very briefly to Jan Brueghel and Tower of London, if you do forgive those runs, it's worth remembering that the French have upgraded one of their staying races. So there is now a 2 mile Group 1 at Paris Longchamp on the 25th of May, which is a new Grade 1 that's been included for this year. €400,000 race, I would be stunned if Aiden doesn't run the Kyprios backups in that.
Let's go. That's my birthday's that weekend, so that could be a good excuse to get over to France. Maybe even do a show over there.
Do you think Cosmic Year could be a real star, off the back of that? I mean, because it was so, you just don't see horses win like that very often, do you?
Yeah, I sort of, it's real shame that in that race the two newcomers finished second and third, and Holly Doyle rode one of the newcomers, really stacked them up round the bend. So it's kind of like, how do we assess this form? But if you just watch the final two furlongs and you see him and you just think, Oisin isn't asking for everything and this horse is just flying.
Yeah.
So the shame is, I guess, that Juddmonte have got so many that they'll now be sort of, Harry Cheltenham was very at pains to kind of make it clear of like, I'm not sure we're going to Newmarket and we'll see where he sits. But this was like, you don't see horses on the all-weather do that very often.
Yeah.
Well, that's where Notable Speech came from. Not necessarily that race, but from the all-weather. Enable started out in the all-weather. Like the idea that that's not where they're taking elite horses anymore is just nonsense. It sounds like you're pretty excited about him, Alan.
It just really, every now and again you see a performance, and a lot of the time you look back at horse, for me more so jumps, but horses that turn into superstars, and you watch them back and an early race in their career, and you think, oh yeah, it was pretty obvious. Like just the Constitution Hill, I think was his first time I ever heard. He basically jumped the last upsides around Sandown and got a slap down the neck and won by 15 lengths or whatever it was. But it was just like, wow, or Q Card winning the bumper around Fontwell. Just those, they just stick in your head a bit. I was just interested to know if I probably haven't paid as much attention to all-weather racing as perhaps you two have over the years, and I just thought it was a striking performance, and that was over jumps. I'd be sort of following that horse closely.
Well, now you've got to switch into flat mode, not only for this summer, but for going ahead as well. And when the response is immediate like that, it really does say something. Alan, anybody else you want to highlight before we wrap up?
No, that was probably my one, just to sort of reiterate on that horse really. So no, I think I think you covered it all.
Would you back Cosmic Year for the Guineas, Adam, or is he just a horse to hold mad tough with, particularly with ground concerns?
Would I back him for the Guineas? I don't. At the moment, I'd be almost of the mind that whatever Juddmonte decide to run is what I'm going to back. But that might just be a bit of recency bias because their horses have both looked really good.
Yeah.
But you kind of anti-post on the flat. Yeah, I want to get a run. The last thing I want to do is stick some money down on Cosmic Year, and then Harry Cheltenham comes out the following day and says we're going to Paris or we're going to Curragh instead. But I think whatever right now, my thought process would be whatever they run is kind of where I was going. Most of the winter, I had sort of been quietly tipping away at a horse called Anno Domini for Godolphin, thinking he might kind of make up into their Guineas horse, but we haven't seen him. They took him out the Greenham. I don't know. The difficulty with this flat racing game is that horses can just take massive leap forwards from 2 to 3, and you've got to be the right side of that. And it's very easy to get caught up in progressive 2-year-old form and forget that a lot of the real superstar 3-year-olds maybe run once or twice at 2. So it's not as straightforward as just assuming everything from last year is going to translate. We'll know more this year in terms of, we've had the Greenham before the Craven, which feels really weird.
Yeah.
But if you looked at some of the French trials that we've seen for the Colts, some of these horses have just come from absolute left field that were nowhere to be seen as 2-year-olds. So you've got to allow for the fact that anything could yet emerge. What right now, unless something really leaps off the page, it's going to be a case of just backing the Juddmonte horses for me, because I think whatever they decide to run will have a great chance.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I am really taken aback by the fact that Field of Gold is 5-1 for the Craven. I don't understand. I don't understand why he's behind Amori City and Wimbledon Hawkeye, for all that I like those horses. It's just bizarre, especially with Rashabar coming out running so well in the Greenham. So we'll be taking some of that for Kieran Schumark and John and Teddy Gosden. The Gosdens are geniuses. They're not necessarily known for Guineas horses. They've won it, obviously, but Kingman got beaten in the Guineas. Their horses tend to really catch fire as the season goes on, but that's an insane price in my mind. Alan, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Final Furlong podcast. I hope we get to do it again. But thank you very much for joining us. How has your first week of full retirement gone?
Yes. I've been busy on the phone trying to carve out some new opportunities for myself. Actually, I joked to a couple of people that my gardens never look better. But I genuinely have painted the decking. But I am excited for... I'm excited going forward, really. I really genuinely sort of feel like I've ticked the one box, had a nice ending to that, and I'm quite excited for the future. So I'm not just saying it for the sake of it.
Good man. And the most important thing is you got out clean, because that's not always easy. So we really enjoyed your company, and hopefully we'll do it again soon. Adam, as always, pleasure chatting to you. Please God, we'll do it again next week. When is the next content for At the Races?
The Greenham that comes out today. I also spent 4 hours this weekend looking at Wesley Ward's 2-year-olds from Keeneland and trying to work out which one of those might be a Royal Ascot one. There's some good content on there. And then we should have something for all-weather finals day if I can get my head around it. Good man.
Excellent stuff. If you've not heard our special with Roderick Kavanagh, the man who's responsible for the last 2 horses who have topped the Craven, even if I could use my mouth words correctly, Craven Breeze Up sales with Tattersalls, then have a listen to that. It's really, really interesting. He's a gas character. He tells some great stories as well. But he's the man behind Van Dijk, a horse called Royal Officer, who's subsequently been sold for half nothing, but that doesn't matter to him. He's a Galileo colt who went for $1 million to Godolphin. Not his fault that the horse didn't go forward. He's also the man behind Native Trail as well. He's got a lot of insight to give. And we speak to Jason Singh from Tattersalls as well, to get an idea of what the Trump tariffs may or may not mean for American investors in the Breeze Ups and Tattersall sales going forward as well. And the Craven Breeze Up sale kicks off this week. You can listen to that now and watch it on YouTube for free. From Adam Mills, Alan Johns, and me, Emmet Kennedy, thank you for joining us on the Final Furlong podcast. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I've enjoyed recording it. Likes and shares are much appreciated, and we're back with more content very, very soon. Sooner than you think, in fact, on the Final Furlong podcast. Look after yourself and each other. God bless.
The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Get up to £500 refunded as real money for new Jeff Banks online accounts after your first month of betting. Use promo code FFP500 at jeffbanks.bet.